Hey, my friends, welcome back to the UNCOMMODiFiED podcast. I'm Tim Windsor, and it's time to take off our mask. It's time to take off the mask that many of you, and definitely me, wear every single day. The mask that says, I'm confident about my opinions, and they're not just well-informed opinions, they're my truth, and they're more than likely the truth. But here's the ugly and real truth. Behind my opinions, behind your opinions, sometimes we're just hiding our biases. Yeah, I said it, biases. That thing we're so uncomfortable admitting at times because it makes us feel exposed, makes us feel vulnerable, and maybe even a little dirty. But if you're here and still listening at this point, you're ready to hear this. I know you are if you've come on this journey on my podcast episodes. You're prepared, I believe today, to admit, and I'm prepared to admit, that we have biases, and they're not just opinions, and it's time to stop lying to ourselves. Now, let's get really honest about something. Let's get honest about our opinions. They're easy. You say something is just your opinion, and it sounds reasonable. It sounds like you've thought it through. But here's the truth. When you say, this is my opinion, when I say, this is my opinion, what we're really doing is building a wall around ourselves, a fortress to defend our view of the world. It's like putting a big shiny stamp on your beliefs and that says, don't question me. I know this is the truth and you should too. But here's the problem. That truth you're so confident in, it's often not the truth at all. It's your bias masquerading as a truth. And here's why it matters. When you say, I have an opinion, you're telling the world ultimately that you are right and you believe you're right. But when you say, I have a bias, you acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, you don't see the things the way they really are. And when you name it and you claim it as your bias, you quickly and immediately open yourself up and others up to the possibility that there may be a flaw in your perspective that needs to be challenged and maybe even changed. So why can't we own it? Why can't we just say, this is my bias, not just, it's my opinion? Why don't we say it? Here's what I believe. It's because it feels a little weak to say it that way. But I'm here to tell you that admitting you have a bias isn't weakness, it's fucking strength. It's the only way to get better, get bigger, and see yourself and the world and others in a more holistic and healthy way. Now let me hit you with some science. You've got to understand why we're so biased if we hope to break free. Here's the problem. Our brains are bias machines. A study by Princeton University found that the human brain categorizes people into groups instantly. You meet someone new, your brain immediately starts sorting them based on race, gender, age, or whatever. This happens in less than a second. In less than a second, you think you're being rational, but your brain's pulling the strings and you're the puppet and you and I are unaware of it. Now, we evolved this way because it helped our ancestors survive. But guess what? We don't live in the wild anymore. You're not running from lions. We're living in a complex, diverse society, and these ancient mental shortcuts, they're screwing us up some days. You think you're in control? You need to think again. Your bias is in control. My bias is in control until we admit it and take control of it. Now, here's where it gets a little bit problematic, a little messy. Bias isn't all bad. That's not what I'm saying. Sometimes, in fact, bias helps. Ever heard of the phrase, trust your gut? Sometimes your gut feeling is just bias working in your favor. A bias towards trust can make relationships stronger. A bias towards caution can keep you safe. But most of the time, bias keeps you small, keeps you from growing, and keeps you from truly connecting with other people. Do you ever look at someone and immediately judge them, whether it's their skin color, accent, clothes, or even their gender? Well, of course you do. Of course I do. We've all done it. But that's harmful bias in action. And here's a brutal stat for you to consider. According to a National Bureau of Economic Research study, resumes with white-sounding names get 50% more callbacks than those with non-white-sounding names, even when the qualifications on the resume are identical. 50% more callbacks for white-sounding names. Think about that. Think about what that says about how deep these biases can run in us. You can't call it just an opinion. It's a bias, plain and simple, and it's hurting people. Here's the ugly truth. These biases don't just hurt people we judge, they hurt us. They make us blind to what's real and true. They shrink our world and limit our possibilities. If you're walking around with biases and not admitting it, you're not just holding others back, you're holding yourself back. So here's the deal. If you want to be uncommodified, here's what I'm thinking on this issue. If you really want to be uncommodified, if you want to stand out, lead and live in a way that leaves a more powerful and positive impact on others, you've got to get past the bullshit of your biases. Biases keep you small, and they keep you locked in a cage of your own making. And when you break free of those biases, you become free. And when you're free, you become dangerous in a wonderful and a wondrous way. When you confront your own biases, you can become bigger than your biases. You can see the world with clearer eyes, not the fogged up lenses that are often distorting the way you view yourself and others and the world around you. Let me tell you this. If you're really serious about living a life that's bigger than the biases that society tries to shove down your throat, you've got to move beyond your own biased, informed bullshit. You've got to break out of your safe little bubble and see the world for what it is. Bewilderingly complicated and beautifully complex. Bias is the enemy of progress. Bias is the enemy of growth. And if you let it, bias will keep you locked in a prison of your own making. So here's a question. Where do you start then? How do you start to move free? Well, simply, admitting you have bias is the doorway to the freedom we all need to find. The moment you say, I have biases, not just opinions, I have biases, something incredible happens. You become conscious. You become aware, and you move from autopilot to deliberate action. Neuroscientists at MIT found that when we actively challenge our biases, our preconceived biases, we create new neural pathways. We rewire our brains. This is called neuroplasticity, and this is the key to breaking old harmful habits and beliefs. But let's be honest. We all want to be the hero in our own story, I believe. But the real hero in my story, in your story, isn't the one who pretends that they're perfect. It's the one who says, here's where I'm wrong, and here's how I'm going to fix it. So here's a question. How do you detect your biases? How do you begin to break your biases and sniff out the bullshit that you've codified as your belief? Here's my thought. You've got to start, and I've got to start, with a hard look in the mirror, and we must begin to track our triggers. Start paying attention to what instantly makes you uncomfortable and defensive. What makes you immediately want to defend yourself and your sacred opinions as an immutable and unchangeable truth. That should be the flashing red light that goes off in your brain that suggests to you a bias may be at play. So let's get practical. Here's some practical bias-breaking moves that I believe you and I could take to begin to address this problem. Number one, biased Jiu-Jitsu, I'm going to call it. I love MMA, and I love the art of Jiu-Jitsu, that the wrestling, grappling part of mixed martial arts. Biased Jiu-Jitsu, that's right. Take your biases and put them on the mat. Flip them over, put them in a choke, and choke them out. When you jump to conclusions about someone or something, ask yourself, wrestle yourself with this question. Why? Why do I feel this way? Is it based on fact, or is it just a reflex? The more you wrestle your biases, the weaker they'll become. Number two, question your quick conclusions. When you form a quick opinion and come to a quick conclusion, stop and ask, is this an opinion based on reality, or is it just my bias screaming at me again? The answer will punch you in the gut more often than not. Three, crush your always and never proclamations. Look for patterns in how you judge others. They always, they never. This always means this. This never means that. Studies show that 70% of people who are aware of their biases, just by becoming aware, change their decision-making processes. Number four, choose genuine curiosity over guaranteed certainty. One of the fastest ways to break biases is to adopt curiosity as a disposition and mindset. Ask, don't assume. Ask why you think the way you do. Dig into the depths of the origin of your beliefs and question the hell out of them. And lastly, get rid of your echo chamber and get your head out of your ass. Force yourself to experience perspectives that make your skin crawl. If you're only listening to people who think and act like you, you're feeding your bias, and it is a hungry beast. You're letting it grow. So get uncomfortable. Talk to someone who doesn't look like you, who doesn't think like you. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be frustrating. But guess what? It's also going to be liberating. You'll start breaking down walls that you don't even know they're there. All right, listen, let's wrap this thing up. I'm not here to make you feel good about yourself. That's not my purpose today and most of my podcasts. I'm here to make you wake up. I'm here to ask you some serious questions, because if you're serious about breaking free, if you're serious about becoming uncommodified, you've got to face your biases head on, because bias is your prison. And here's the kicker. You are the one, and you are the only one who holds the key to set yourself free. The question is, are you brave enough to use it? Brave enough to break down those biases, become uncommodified, and unleash your full, unbiased potential. And remember, you don't just have opinions. You and I have biases. And it's not our opinions that define us. It's our ability to challenge what's behind them and the truth that is in them or not. So until the next time we chat, stay humble and stay curious, and don't always believe your own bullshit that may just be on its way to becoming an unhelpful and unhealthy bias. Cheers. Have an excellent day.